When you look at the Lakers roster and the way it is currently constructed, it just screams a trade. And we know that the Lakers have been actively trying to work out some sort of deal. Now, the Lakers aren't going to do a deal just to do a deal, right? No trade is better than a bad trade in this situation. And the Lakers know that if they're not going to find a deal that is going to make them marginally better, why do a deal at all? But the beautiful thing is the Lakers at least have options, which is good. That is a good sign, right? If the Lakers didn't really have options and it was just kind of like this one team, then yeah, of course they could fleece you. But given that there are several teams, right, that are all interested in a potential Laker trade to acquire a pick, and even though all of those teams want both of the Lakers first, it almost feels like sooner or later somebody is going to say, you know what, let's cave a little. And the Lakers can kind of use all these other options to leverage against the other teams, right? Okay, well, you all want two first. Well, which one of you is eventually going to cave and say, okay, fine, we'll take one first in a pick swap and a second, or we'll take, one first and, 3 seconds or whatever. Sooner or later, you almost feel like a team is just going to say, you know what, let's just get one of those first, and there is still time. We do have LeBron's camp, which is supposed to happen tomorrow, but I don't believe the Lakers are operating on that thought process, right? I believe the Lakers, if a deal is on the table the day before the season begins, then they're going to take that deal, right? It would suck if, Monday comes and they go into training camp and media day and stuff like that, and you have Russ and you see the pictures and stuff like that. But all these other teams got to do the same thing. So I do imagine that if a deal is to get done, again, I'm not saying a deal will get done, but if a deal is to get done, it's very likely going to happen before Monday, before media day, because all of these teams are going to want to have their rosters in line. Not just that, but why would any team want to go into training camp and still be negotiating trades and things like that? If any deal is going to happen, they're going to do it before all of like the media stuff and training camp and things like that. So that way they know what their roster is. The coaches for those respected teams know what the roster is, right? And so take the, Indiana Pacers deal, right? The biggest problem that the Lakers have right now on their roster is the wing position, right? They have plenty of guards. Their guard play could be very good this year as currently constructed, and they have bigs, right? Thomas Bryant, Damian Jones, and you have Anthony Davis, who can play the 4 or 5. Thomas Bryant, with his shooting, can play the 4 or 5, so that's hugely beneficial. But as great as the Pacers deal is, and might make us one of, if not the best defensive teams in the league. I mean, you have the two pit bulls up front, and, Dennis Schroeder and Patrick Beverley. Not saying that they both start, but you could see spots and just situations where they do. And then you have, you have Anthony Davis and Miles Turner in the front court, just manning the paint. Like, good luck. Good luck trying to score on this team with LeBron James kind of facilitating everything. I just think that would be just a beautiful scenario. And then Buddy Hield, if Buddy Hield starts or he comes off the bench as a scorer, whatever the scenario is, you get your lights out shooter. Problem is, you still don't have the wing position covered. And personally, I don't think this deal is worth 2 firsts. I'm not going to go heavily into the Pacers deal because I just did. So I'll actually post that video, a link down in the description. Go check it out after this video. But just to kind of summarize, the Lakers turned down an offer for these two for 2 unprotected firsts. Now, that is maybe to some sounds like a good idea. But Miles Turner is a 12-7 guy that wants $20+ million a year, is an excellent shot blocker. Don't get me wrong. But the problem is he's a free agent. He could just walk and leave, which is a real concern. Secondly, he is very injury prone. He's another street clothes, as people like to call Anthony Davis, right? So you have your 2 centers and your power forward / center, and which both of these could be interchangeable. Both of them, both Miles Turner and Anthony Davis, have both played the center position as well as the power forward position, but they're both very injury prone. And as much as I would love Miles Turner, because Miles Turner is kind of Damian Jones and Thomas Bryant meshed into one center, so it would be hugely beneficial. Doesn't solve our wing problem, and it doesn't solve our injury problem. You have a bunch of guys that could go down, miss various amounts of time throughout the season. It could be a real risk. But I do think, personally, for the right deal, for the right price, this is still probably the best deal, because I think that this makes the Lakers the best team possible. I think this deal makes them as close to a contender as possible, if not, depending on chemistry and just fit, and if everything meshes well and stuff like that, maybe you could make the argument they are a contender. We won't know that until the season actually progresses, but on paper, they would be a very solid team, right? They'd be young, they'd be athletic, they'd be fast, they have size. You got LeBron James, you got Anthony Davis, Miles Turner, Buddy Hield, got a little bit of everything. Be a great position to be in. And so, this deal is great, but it doesn't solve the wing problem like, the Utah deal, which the Utah deal, I think, still is the most likely to happen. I think that the Pacers deal and what that was put out in public, I think that that was huge for the Lakers, because now they can go and say, hey, Utah, Indiana is willing to do this deal for just 2 firsts. If we're going to give up 2 firsts, we're going to go do the Indy deal. So if you want to stick to your 2 firsts, then forget it. We'll just go do the Indy deal and you could figure it out. Because the one thing the Lakers have that nobody else has is the position to solve all of Utah's problems in one swoop, rather than Utah having to go find several deals, having to find not only deals, but deals to where they can waive guys, or, do 2-for-1 type deals where, they're sending out 2 players for 1 and getting a first and stuff like that. And teams aren't just lining up to do that. They've had negotiations, yes, but no teams have deals on the table other than the Lakers, and the problem is that if the Lakers are gone, then that just makes it so much easier for these other teams to get what they want. Miami, they would probably trade Duncan Robinson for, Bogdanovich and Clarkson, or something along those lines. Maybe there have to be some other pieces that are involved in that. But my point is that if you're willing to take on a long-term salary, we'll give you a first and take these guys that make us better. Like, that's the problem. But that makes no sense for Utah. In that scenario, you might as well just take 1 first and go get, Russell Westbrook, because at least you're not taking on long-term salary. Any team that is going to acquire these pieces are going to require the Utah Jazz to take on long-term salary. And that's the difference. That's the point. And this deal at least solves the wing issue. You get Bogdanovich, who can play the 3 and the 4. You get Beasley, who can play the 2 and the 3. And you get a more traditional shooting guard, right? You get a guy that can kind of just plug in, be your starter. Clarkson, I think the Lakers could run. I would personally try to see if they could flip Clarkson to another team. That's just kind of my thought, because if all these teams supposedly want Clarkson and Bogdanovich and stuff like that, but they don't want to meet Utah's asking price, well, if you're the Lakers, you don't want a first. You want a piece that can help you now. So if a team is willing to give you, say a salary player or something, then yeah, why not do that? I'm just throwing this out there. I'm not saying that this would happen, or that the Lakers should, but say Jay Crowder. What if the Suns were like, we want Clarkson, we'll trade you Crowder for Clarkson. I understand the LeBron thing. I understand, Suns might not want Clarkson. I'm just using it as an example. I just want to specify that. But let's say it's something like that. Or let's say the Knicks. Say the Knicks are like, we would like Clarkson. We'll trade you Cam Reddish for Clarkson, and maybe do something like that. I'm not saying that would happen, but I would at least explore that possibility. If I'm the Lakers, you get your wing depth, and then if you could get a Jay Crowder or a Cam Reddish, or maybe a Kelly Oubre, something like that, get the Hornets involved. Maybe the Hornets would want a Jordan Clarkson, and now you got your wing depth covered. Because as much as I like the Pacers deal, I don't think it's a necessity. I don't think they absolutely need that. If you could leverage the Utah deal to get another sort of wing style player, I think that would be huge for the Lakers. Even Kelly Oubre, if you could get Beasley, Oubre, and Bogdanovich, that would be perfect. There you go. That basically solves all of your issues. That solves all of your lack of wing depth. Boom, in one swoop. And if you could leverage the other trades against Utah, that may be beneficial as well. If Utah was the only game in town, the Lakers might be in trouble, but they're not. You have the Pacers, you have the Jazz, you have the Spurs, who have publicly said they're willing to do that. You have all these teams that the Lakers can use to say, look, Utah, you have to do something. And would you rather just waive players and just burn money rather than getting some assets, getting some, pieces for your future? Like, which direction are you going? Are you a rebuilding team, or are you, trying to contend? Because this team, as currently constructed, is still very good. They're not like contender good, but they're at least like, they could be in a play-in spot, maybe even sneak into the playoffs, just because all you have to do is win 2 games. And if the team gets hot or something, now you just went backwards instead of forward, and you have a generational, or what many believe, a generational player in this draft. And Victor, like, why wouldn't you want to take that opportunity? And then the Spurs could facilitate as like a 3 team, as a 3rd team. Maybe you could leverage to where you could get a Josh Richardson or something like that. And many people do like the Spurs deal. Personally, I'm not big on the Spurs deal. I don't think it's the worst trade in the world. I just think it depends. I think it depends on what the Spurs, but I could see the Spurs saying, we're trying to tank as much as possible. Let's just get a 27th unprotected pick. Let's get, a couple seconds or a pick swap or something like that and do that. I think if anyone was going to cave, I think it would be the Spurs. And I know Pop, and he's even said in the past that he won't do deals with the Lakers and stuff, but Pop isn't stupid. He knows this team isn't going to be contending while he's there. Very likely, unless something just crazy happens. But chances are, he's probably going to be gone before the Spurs are a legit contender once again. So he's going to want to set this team up for the future, even after him. And if you can tank and go get a Victor and have all this cap space and have these assets and start putting the pieces in place and start building, and then if the Lakers are terrible, which is why all these teams want those picks, because they all believe they're going to be lottery picks. Well, if you're good and you got that 27th pick and that pick turns into being a lottery pick, then you're great. I mean, you're talking the Tim Duncan situation all over again, right? So I could see the Spurs, out of anybody, being the first to cave, just because Pop is just looking at his situation and scenario, which he's never really been in, right? The last 20 years, they've been the model of success and just championships and things like that. And now they're kind of moving in this new era where they're starting to hit the reset button, trying to pick a direction to stick to. And so I could see Pop just saying, you know what, let's go get that first. Let's go try to get a pick swap or something. Even if we just facilitate in a 3rd team, maybe we'll take on Westbrook, right? We need to meet some salary. We need to do some stuff. Maybe we'll take on Westbrook and kind of just let them get whatever they get, and we'll add a piece or whatever, and then if we can get, a 28 pick swap, or maybe this year's pick swap or something like that, maybe we can make something happen. I just think it's something that I could see the Spurs really looking into, and it makes sense that the Spurs have put out there hey, we're still here. We're still willing to do this. Whether we're facilitating or we're actually just a straight up deal. I mean, they were there from, the Kyrie days, right? Those long distant days. But yeah, I mean, you have that. And then of course you have the Knicks. The Knicks, I think, are a team that makes a lot of sense, and the Knicks might be the only team that might actually play Westbrook, which I think is interesting. Now, they originally wanted to waive him, but that was when they were planning on getting Donovan Mitchell, and it made sense. But now they don't have Donovan Mitchell. Brunson's played the shooting guard and played off of Luka. Not saying that Luka and Westbrook are comparable or anything like that, but still, he knows what it takes to play off the ball to a primary ball handler, which Westbrook is. Westbrook would be box office in New York. I still believe Westbrook has it in him to be a guy that can really lead. I think with Westbrook on the Knicks, I think the Knicks at least make the playoffs. I really do. I mean, look, a year earlier than this past year, Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal, with a bunch of guys that you probably can't even name, went and took them to the playoffs. They didn't really do much after that, but they still made the playoffs. I think Westbrook with, Julius Randle, Brunson, Barrett, Mitchell, like all of those things, I think they really could make a legit run, make a legit splash, especially towards the bottom of the Eastern Conference. Like, the Eastern Conference is very top heavy, but like that, 7, maybe even 6 to 11 space, I think is very open. Like, anybody could get into that. And then if you're a game or two in the 11th and you're trying to get to the 10th, I think you can make a push to get it. But nonetheless, Cam Reddish was literally traded to the Lakers last year until the Knicks got greedy and messed the whole deal up, as they were filing the paperwork. Lakers would get a guy like Evan Fournier, who can shoot the ball, 3-and-D style. Again, kind of like the Beasley scenario where you get a more traditional shooting guard, and you get that wing player. I don't think that this is a terrible deal, but would the Knicks cave? The Knicks, I think, are another team that would. I really do, because they want to clear cap space. Not only do they want to clear cap space, but they want to free up spots for their young guys. I mean, and this trade is actually pretty fair even without a pick. So if you're the Knicks, you might look at it and just be like, look, let's say we throw in Rose. We move off of Rose, which we've been trying to trade and it's not working. So we move off of Rose. We move off of Fournier's money. Cam Reddish, Tibbs doesn't even want and is not going to play. So that doesn't matter. And, maybe we could get a pick swap or a couple seconds, or a pick swap and a couple seconds, or maybe something, anything. And we free up cap space. Not only do we free up cap space, we also free up roster spots for our young guys. We get a guy in Westbrook who could probably help us right now. And if it doesn't work, who cares? We could buy him out, or we could just sit him or send him home or whatever. If it does work, great. We're in the playoffs. Life is good. And then if it works out and maybe you want to re-sign him, you re-sign him. If not, you let him walk. And it's no skin off your back. You're in a great position. So I do think the Knicks make a lot of sense too. I just think the overall package, as high as I am on Reddish, I would like a more veteran style small forward. I would like a guy with size that has been there, has been in the trenches, that knows what it takes to guard a Kawhi or a Paul George or, an Andrew Wiggins, stuff like that. Like guys that we're going to meet in the playoffs that you're going to need to have that experience of I know how to handle this guy. I'm not going to be able to stop him, but I can at least slow him down. That's what we need. And I am really high on Reddish. Again, a guy that can play the 3, he can play the 4. He's got versatility. Fournier would be great. Derrick Rose. I think he'd kind of be redundant on this Lakers team, but if you don't have to give up a first or something like that, then maybe it makes sense. I just think it depends on what the Knicks would want. But it becomes which team is willing to cave. Which team is going to say, you know what, let's just get an asset. Let's just get something. What position are we in right now? We're not a contender, right? Even in the Knicks scenario, we're not a contender. We're not tanking. We're kind of in the middle of the pack. Let's let the young guys get some burn and try to make a run for at least a playoff spot. And worst case, we get a bunch of guys that get some play time and experience and stuff. I just think when you look at all 4 of these deals, and look, there might be other deals in the works, like the Hornets, stuff like that. There may very well be other deals that the Lakers have talked about. And there might even be a team that we haven't even heard of or thought of that would be in the mix of this. I wouldn't be shocked if a team came out of left field and just swooped in on this deal and was like, hey, we'll take a 27th unprotected first for these guys. I wouldn't be shocked at all. There's other teams that have been mentioned like Detroit and stuff, but I don't think that's real. I don't think the Lakers would even entertain those deals. I think it's basically these 4 teams, if I had to guess. And I think, the Utah Jazz deal is the most likely. I think that one is the one that does get done, if a deal was to get done. But if the Pacers will drop it to a first and maybe a pick swap, or a first in a couple seconds, I think the Lakers would pull the trigger immediately. I think they would take that deal. And I wouldn't mind them taking that deal. I just think for both firsts, it just doesn't make sense. There's too many risks if you were to do that I don't think it would be beneficial. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I want to hear from you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. What do you think of the Lakers' options? Where do you rank these potential trade partners? Do you rank the Hield trade, Miles Turner, Buddy Hield, the Jazz? Like, personally, I think, let's say it's all even. Let's say we have to give 2 first-round picks, right? Just to keep it fair, just to keep it simple, right? I would say the Hield trade and the Miles Turner. So Pacers deal, then the Jazz deal, then the Knicks deal, and then the Spurs deal. Me personally. But I'd love to hear what you think. And I do imagine the Lakers are gathering information and using that as leverage against other teams, right? You know what the Spurs want? Well, at least kind of. You know that they at least want a first, but I imagine they probably, all 4 teams probably want both firsts. So you kind of just go and just say to each team, well, I like this deal better. I like this deal better. You go to the Pacers and you say, well, I like the Jazz deal better. So if I'm going to do both picks, I'm going to do it to the Jazz. Go to the Jazz and you say, I like the Pacers deal better. If I'm going to do the deal, I'm going to do the Pacers deal. Same thing with the Knicks. I like the Pacers and Jazz deal better. But, if you would do just like a pick swap, then, hey, and the same thing with the Spurs. That's how they could do it, But anyway, love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Let me know. Quick little shameless plug, everyone. If you enjoy my videos and commentary here on this channel, As It Stands Lakers, then check out the link down in the description below and go subscribe to As It Stands. Believe it or not, As It Stands was the first channel. If it wasn't for that channel, this channel would never have existed. Because of the success of that channel, it led me to want to create this Lakers channel. So do me a huge solid. If you're not subscribed over there, go check that out. Go subscribe over there. I talk all things sports, all teams, things like that, not just the Lakers. So if you just enjoy my commentary and want to hear me talk about other things, or you just, are a fan of other sports and other teams, go check that out. I promise you will not be disappointed. That being said, hit that like button. Helps me out a lot. Lets me know you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, followed by the bell notification. Stay up to date with all things sports. Join this wonderful community and all of our discussions. I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.